Hello there and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we're finishing my Legends of series with a look at the Legends of Rally. We begin with the 1965 Mini Cooper S, 75 horsepower, 80 foot-pound torque, 1,480 pounds of weight. This is the least powerful car here today, least torquey car, and the lightest car. Just before we fully get into today's episode, it is worth pointing out that all these cars are the road-going versions of the rally cars and not the actual rallying variants. Just thought I would point that out quickly. Anyways, the Mini Cooper S, of course, was famous for winning the 1965 Monte Carlo rally, but it has also achieved other various rallying achievements. It is quite a popular rally car, even to this day, I believe, in sort of your lower level rallies. People still really like the original Mini, and of course, it's a legend in its own right. Everyone knows the original Mini. Yeah, it is a car I do quite like, the original Mini. Me personally, I do prefer the later models. You know, your sort of around 2000s models, just because they kind of, I don't know, I'm a bit weird like that. It's like I like the Austin Maestros from like 2001 for some reason. But you know, these early model Mini Coopers are still pretty cool. They're the most sought after. And one thing worth pointing out, you can see how incredibly small this car is as it goes around the track. It is hilariously small. And that sort of extends to the way this thing drives. It is slow. There is no getting around the fact that this has 75 horsepower. However, it is a huge amount of fun. If you just go onto a small track and don't really care about lap times, you can get so much fun out of the little Mini Cooper. It's just great to just chuck it through the corners, maybe give yourself a little bit of handbrake action. It was so fun to drive even around here. It made it almost difficult to drive just because of how much fun it actually is. You sort of don't want to just go ahead and drive it normally. You do sort of want to just chuck it through corners at maximum speed and let the rear end slide out and stuff. It is hilarious. Next up, 1975 Lancia Stratos HF Stradale, 190 horsepower, 165 foot-pound torque, 2,161 pounds of weight. Arguably the most successful rally car of the 1970s. The Stratos featured pretty much everything the rally enthusiast in 1970 could want. It had a very, very sort of short wheelbase, it had a very short body, but it also had the power of a V6 Ferrari engine, which made it incredibly quick. Yeah, the Stratos is a pretty cool car. I'm kind of a fan of the Stratos. I'm not as much of a fan of it as most people are. Most people think this car looks absolutely gorgeous. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the way it looks unless it's got all the spotlights on it and everything. This one obviously doesn't. But yeah, probably not my favourite of the Lancias. You know, I do prefer the Deltas and stuff, but the Stratos is a pretty cool car. As far as it goes to drive, it is a very, very soft suspension in this vehicle. The Stratos is fully set up to rally and nothing else. So it is very soft. It also likes to get its arse end out a bit because it's so soft. The weight transfer is a little bit wonky on it. But it is a very quick car in a straight line. You know, it only has 190 horsepower, but it only weighs 2,161 pounds. And as a result, you know, compare it to today's hot hatches, it's about on the same level as those speed-wise. It is a very, very quick car, if you can get around sort of the softness and the slidiness and whatever. This isn't a quick car though. This is the 1977 Ford Escort RS 1800, 115 horsepower, 126 foot-pound torque, 1,986 pounds of weight. Of course, the Ford Escort has been a very successful rally car ever since they first launched. You had, of course, the RS Cosworth and so on and so forth. I decided to go for the Mark II Escort in all of this because why not? And I believe this is one of the more successful when it comes to the Ford Escort. Although, if you do want a Ford Escort in this game, there are plenty of different versions. Of course, you've got the Mark I, Mark II, and the aforementioned RS Cosworth. The Mark II Escort, probably my least favourite of those three. I really like the first-gen Escort, the sort of dog bone, and I love the RS Cosworth. But this one, it's still a pretty cool car, don't get me wrong. It's very boxy, it's very, I want to say Britannia, but they weren't actually, well, they were built in Britain, but that's a story for another time. Ford basically just is whatever nationality the country that makes it decides to be. Anyways, as far as it goes to drive, it is a bit of an unfortunate story. The car itself is okay. The problem is it has the worst differential in the world. It is an awful, awful diff. It just wants to one-tire fire everywhere. You know, no matter what speed or anything, you can see it doing it on this lap quite clearly. It is by far and away the worst car here to drive today, which is a little bit unfortunate because, again, I love the Ford Escort, but yeah, you can sort of just see it really just, it doesn't go around corners quite the way I would want it to. Next up, 1982 Lancia O37 Stradale, 202 horsepower, 172 foot-pound of torque, 2,540 pounds of weight. We are getting into the Group B era of rally cars, and of course the O37 Stradale is famous for being the only rear-wheel drive car that could topple the Audi Quattro, although it would eventually itself be rendered obsolete by the Lancia Delta S4. No Deltas in this episode because I didn't want this episode to be full of Lancias, even though it really could have been, because Lancia is incredibly successful when it comes to rallying. Anyways, the O37 Stradale, it's kind of a cool car. I like it. I much prefer the Delta S4. But of course, the O37 is famous for one thing here in Forza, and that's for being hilariously quick. This thing has been a leaderboard car since I can remember. In fact, since it came into the game, I believe this has been a leaderboard car, and that's because it handles superbly. It has absolutely awesome handling. I cannot fault the handling of this car in any way, shape or form. You just point it at a corner and it'll go through it. It doesn't argue with you or anything like that. It is an awesome, awesome handling car. You can take an insane amount of speeds through the corners. It is slow-ish, you know, it is only a 202 horsepower car, but that's the beauty of the O37. Because you don't have to work on the handling so much, you can chuck a load of power at this thing, and that's why the O37 is as quick as it is, because you can just chuck power at it. And around a short course, this thing will obliterate pretty much anything in the same class. Next up, 1983 Audi Quattro, 306 horsepower, 258 foot-pound torque, 2,807 pounds of weight. Of course, we had to get the legendary Audi Quattro into this episode. Possibly the most famous rally car of all time, the Audi Quattro. If you ask most people, name a rally car, the Audi Quattro will probably be around the top, and that's for good reason, because this is the car that basically told everyone to get off their arse when it came to Group B rally. It dominated until the end of that particular category of rallying, although I think it only won one title, if I'm correct on that. Anyways, of course, the Audi Quattro, a fantastic car. I do kind of like the Quattro, it's pretty cool. I love the engine note. This thing, of course, 5-cylinder turbo petrol, sounds absolutely amazing. As far as it goes to drive, it is a very quick car, like modern day fast. Like, this thing would embarrass a Subaru Impreza off the line. It is quick. However, it is very wallowy on the suspension. The suspension, again, kind of similar to the Stratos. You can tell it's very much set up for rallying, and it does like to have a bit of a dive and a pitch into all of the corners. But that being said, yeah, it is still a very, very quick car, pretty good car. If you stuck some decent suspension on it, you could probably go and embarrass some Evos if you so felt like it. Next up, 1985 Ford RS 200 Evolution, 506 horsepower, 401 foot-pound torque, 2,464 pounds of weight. The most powerful car today here by far, and the torquiest car here today by far. This one is slightly cheating because it is the Evolution model, which was basically the crazy nuts bastard version of the RS200, but nevertheless, of course, it has to be here today. While the RS200 wasn't particularly successful when it went rallying, it is still a legendary car. Most people can easily recognise the RS200, and yeah, the RS200 is a pretty batshit insane car. As far as this one goes to drive, it is great. It is also incredibly mental to drive. You know, mid-engine, four-wheel drive, it just... You just sort of press the throttle and it just sort of hyperspeeds you into corners and out of corners, and it's crazy mental. A little bit of understeer, as you'd maybe expect from a 1985 car, but other than that, this is a phenomenal car to drive. It is, again, it's kind of like the Mini in the sense that this one is a lot of fun to drive. And you know, with 506 horsepower in the classification of this car, it could embarrass some supercars. It is incredible, the little RS200. Next up, decided to go for something a little bit interesting, the 1992 Mitsubishi Galant VR4, 237 horsepower, 224 foot-pound torque, 2,976 pounds of weight. This is the heaviest car here today, although it's not a hugely heavy car in the grand scheme of things. Before Mitsubishi had the Lancer Evo, they were using this, the good old Galant, which was used from 1989 to 1992. I believe it was, before, of course, it was surpassed by the Evolution, and it did see some moderate success. I do like the Mitsubishi Galant. I much prefer sort of the later generation of the Galant, but this one is still pretty cool, and of course, it is kind of a significant car considering it really is the predecessor to the Lancia Evo. Anyways, as far as this one goes to drive, pretty nondescript really. It is a good car to drive. Rather understeer, you can sort of see coming out of that corner there, it sort of just likes the front end push a little bit. I'm assuming that's because most of the weight for this is over the front. I'm not 100% sure if this is full-time all-wheel drive or if it's one of those basically push all the power to the front until the rear end breaks free or something like that. But yeah, the Galant does like the front end push a little bit, but it is a good car to drive. It is a good base platform. You know, you can sort of do pretty much anything you want to it. It's sort of like a less powerful Evo or Impreza. You know, you can just take the platform, you know, do whatever you want to it, make a good race car, you can make a good drag car or whatever you want to do. And finally today, of course, we had to see one of these. It is the 1998 Subaru Impreza 22B STI, 256 horsepower, 265 foot-pound torque, 2,800 pounds of weight. The Subaru Impreza rally car. Of course, again, similar to the Quattro, probably one of the most famous rally cars in the world. This livery is iconic the world over, and while they're at a much lesser extent these days, Subaru Imprezas are still very much the rally car of choice for many professionals these days in various rally organisations around the world, including people who just want to make homemade rally cars. Subaru Impreza, you can pick one up for a couple of grand and turn it into a rally car, and it's great. 22B, probably my least favourite of the Imprezas in this game, apart from maybe the apart from the hatchback, my least favourite Impreza in the game. I don't know, I've never really been a huge fan of the first gen Impreza, but I know there's a lot of love for this generation. As far as it goes to drive, this thing is great. Possibly the best handling of the Subaru Imprezas. That might be down to the fact that it has slightly less power than most of the Imprezas. It does lack overall straight line speed over the other Imprezas, not quite as quick as those, but yeah, if you want a sort of a more handling orientated Impreza, the 22B is the way to go. The Hawkeye's a more rounded car, and then of course there's various other Imprezas that sort of fall somewhere in between. Anyways, on to the leaderboard, and unsurprisingly, the fastest car of today is the Ford RS200 Evolution. Goes in the 32nd place with 117.268. Remember what I said about it embarrassing supercars? Yeah, beats out a Nissan GTR, Ferrari FF, another GTR, losing out only slightly to the XJ220. Yeah, the RS200 is hilariously quick. Moving down the board some more, in 86th place we find the Subaru Impreza 22B with 125.757. It is one of the slower Imprezas that we've had, not quite as slow as the 2011, although those cars really are, they can change times easily, you know, there's really not much in them. In 88th place we find the Audi Quattro 125.908, beating out a modern day Evo 8 and an Audi RS3 Sportback, interestingly enough, which is, I guess, the modern interpretation of the Quattro. Interesting. Anyways, moving down the board some more, in 96th place we found the Lancia O37 Stradale with 126.586. It actually goes near a pretty similar car to it, the Lotus Elise 111S. Beats out Ferrari Daytona, Buick Regal, G65 AMG, Ford, Renault Megane. Yeah, pretty good time from the O37 as you'd expect. The Lancia Stratos HF Stradale goes in 112th place with 128.982, losing out slightly to the Ferrari 250 California, but it beats the Renault Alpine Le Mans, Plymouth GTX, the Bel Air Hoonigan, the Fox Body Mustang. Pretty good time from the Stratos. Moving down the board some more, in 121st place we find the Mitsubishi Galant VR4 with 130.524, marginally off of a Savannah RX-7. Interestingly enough, it beats out the Subaru Legacy RS by about 0.7 of a second, which is sort of that car's main rival, which is pretty darn interesting. And finally today we find some of the slow coaches. In 144th place we find the Ford Escort RS 1800 with 137.040. It's in a place where we can't really compare anything because we haven't really had any more, that many cars that are comparable to the Escort in terms of performance. And finally, in 148th place, the Mini Cooper S with 143.622. It does beat out a Toyota Land Cruiser, AMC Pacer, and the Volkswagen Beetle to not become the slowest car we've ever had, but it is certainly one of them. But nevertheless, that Cooper, I highly recommend it. It is a huge, huge amount of fun to drive. Anyways, that is it for the Legends of Rally episode, and of course the Legends of series. I do hope you've enjoyed this series. Next week, not quite sure what we're going to be doing, but as always, be sure to leave your suggestions for themes and vehicles you'd like to see go around the Top Gear track in the comments below. But that is it from me, friends. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, farewell.